I was a suck-ass social worker because I did not pass this test. Hi, my name is Brianna and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I practice Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. In this video, I will introduce to you REBT and how I use REBT to address my test-taking anxiety. Well, let's begin, because boy is it a story. Well, I guess that's for you to determine. So as I mentioned in the intro, I'm a social worker, and after school, I got my master's in social work, and there is at a point in a social worker's career who, if you wish to do therapy and provide diagnosis and treatment planning and do individual sessions, it is ideal to obtain a clinical license. So it was a time where I needed to take my clinical licensure exam, and I was taking it before the rest of my colleagues. And I was excited, but nervous at the same time, but excited. And when I studied for about a month, I didn't want to overwhelm myself in studies. I really felt, very, again, confident in my skills. I took the test. This test is about 3 hours long. And I took the test. And during the test, there was this realization that hit me. And it was that, oh my gosh, I'm taking a very important test, at least important for my career and important for myself, something I really cared about because, it's a part of my goal, it's part of my journey. And when that realization hit, I started messing up. I started self-doubting myself. I started going back to the questions. I started rereading. Then I even lost the ability to read. I'm just staring at words at this point. And let's just say I wasn't very confident when I pressed submit. And in this exam, which I think they changed it now, but in this exam, they tell you right off the bat if it's pass or fail. And when I tell you the word fail that appeared in front of the screen, I felt so devastated. I walked out of the testing center. I walked towards the person who held on to my items or held the key so I can unlock my items. And it felt like the walk of shame. I felt like, obviously, not only did I just fail this test, but I told myself I was a suck-ass, excuse my French, but I was a suck-ass social worker because I did not pass this test. And I didn't realize that what I was experiencing at the time was ego anxiety, especially after I failed. Ego anxiety is when you are basing your total self-acceptance on the outcome and of other people's judgments. So putting it in REBT perspective, it wasn't the exam or the thought of taking the exam again that caused my anxiety, but it was what I was telling myself about the exam. I based my total self-acceptance on the outcome. I told myself that I can only accept myself as a social worker if I pass this test. And so I didn't pass the test. So I was not feeling myself as a social worker. I didn't want to come into work. I didn't want to tell my colleagues. I was like, if once they find out that, I'm already experiencing imposter syndrome. So once they find out that then it's going to be proven that I am not good. I should not have chosen this field. I should have been a writer like I wanted to in college. I was feeling all of the feels or thinking all of the things. So I worked with my mentor, Terry London. And yeah, he helped me realize that I was experiencing ego anxiety. I had to work using REBT, going through the ABCs, challenging what it is I was telling myself. And the main huge thing I was saying is that, again, because I failed this test, I was a terrible, incompetent, inadequate social worker. And so the disputing towards that belief is, yes, I failed, but how does that make me totally bad? I've had clients who said that, that they felt very comfortable with me, that we've made accomplished goals together in our in our sessions. So there were evidence that there's times when I did well, and there's times when I don't do well, where sometimes I miss the mark on certain things. But all in all, the irrational thinking behind the thought is that I had to be, that it was black and white, that this test, I use this test to measure my, not my behavior, not my abilities, but my total sense of self. And I worked and I disputed and I came up with coping statements such as, just because I fail, it doesn't make me a failure. Okay? Because I'm a human being. I won't get it right all the time. And if I continue thinking that, or continue measuring myself in the way that I did in regards to this test, then I was never going to have I was going to be miserable when it came to retaking the test. When practicing REBT, it is helpful to not only identify the beliefs that's causing your disturbance, but after challenging it, you want to create coping statements to help you enforce the habit that you want to obtain. So in my situation, I utilize my coping statements so that I can not make myself anxious during the test, but continue to stay concerned and cautious about my performance on a test. So this entire ordeal isn't to have an I don't care attitude, to be super chill and lax, but it's to still maintain the level of ambition that I have towards accomplishing this goal. But I don't have to do it with so much pressure that I was putting on myself to do. So with the coping statements, such as the one I provided earlier, that if I fail, it doesn't make me a failure, that felt like a huge weight off my chest every time I said it. I kept practicing it before the test and I practiced it during the test so that I can maintain a level of performance that will get me closer to my goal. But if I kept telling myself, oh shit, this is important, if I fail, I'm a failure, of course I'm going to ruin my chances of accomplishing my goal and passing the test. So the idea here is, once you identify your beliefs and you challenge it, then after challenging, you create your coping statements and you use it. And practice takes perfect, well, kind of perfect, but practice until you are able to reinforce that new way of thinking. You want to reinforce neural pathways that oftentimes will go to the irrational thinking that caused the emotions that were self-defeating to more of a rational mindset, a rational thinking. You want to keep practicing it so when you are enduring the activating events, you're less likely to go straight to rational thinking, but you're going to go into thinking more rational. Hence, REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. Oftentimes, people are not aware that they are telling themselves anything or that a thought process is happening when it's compared to an activating event on your emotions. Some people would say the test gives me anxiety, but it's what you're telling yourself about the test. Super important. The reason people are oftentimes linking the test to the emotion is because what we're telling ourselves is so quick. We've gotten to the habit of not knowing that we are telling ourselves anything, that we're thinking anything. So RBT incorporates something called thought catching. We slow down our thinking just so we can have a better performance. So by slowing down my thinking during the test, I realized I was putting a lot, again, ego anxiety. I was measuring my entire sense of self onto the test. And once I realized that and I challenged that and I broke that belief, broke that very core rigid belief into, something more flexible, a preference that not only did I want to pass the test, I was telling myself to make myself disturbed that I must pass the test. And if I don't, it would be awful and it would prove that I'm a bad social worker. That's the theory of musting. And anytime you change the healthy desire, want, preference into a rigid, dogmatic, command, demand, necessity, you are going to disturb yourself. And in this situation, the disturbance was anxiety, test-taking anxiety. And so I had to catch those thoughts and realize that I don't need to, I don't have to pass this test, but I highly desire to. I wanted to. And so maintaining that level of flexibility kind of helped me with not putting so much pressure on myself. And I didn't catastrophize, or I told myself it would be horrible if I were to fail. And I simply put, it's not the worst thing that can happen to me to take the test again. Unfortunate, yes, but not the worst thing. And so these are examples of thoughts that usually trip us up and that we're not aware we're telling ourselves. But if you have a well-knowledge REBT specialist to help you with this, or a therapist in general can help you identify these thoughts, but REBT therapists, they work more so on not only identifying the thoughts, but challenging them. But then there was also a secondary disturbance I was experiencing, because now I felt shame and embarrassment of having failed this test. I made myself embarrassed. And a lot of people are going to tell me or challenge the thought, no, it's embarrassing. No. I made myself embarrassed, because there are people who have failed this test and didn't feel the sense of shame that I felt telling their loved ones or colleagues. Only you can make yourself embarrassed, because you're saying that not only did I do bad and it makes me a bad person, but now other people can see that I did bad, and that will further validate that I'm this bad person. And with that thinking, of course, you're going to want to hide under the nearest rock in the covers of your bed and never want to go out. But it's the changing of that perspective, and that is what was important for me to really kind of come to grips. And so I went the next day, and whenever anytime someone asks me about my test, I'll start with I failed. And there's power in that, because if I were able to say it straightforward and run the risk of judgments and convince myself that I can bear their judgments, even if they thought I was incompetent, it didn't make me incompetent. It wasn't a true measure. And so those are type of skills and rational emotive behavior techniques that we try to utilize in sessions when I'm talking to my clients. Try to have them go towards the thing that they're making themselves most anxious about. And me, it was telling my colleagues and my friends that I failed. So it took a lot of work, but all in all, just to recap, I realized that the test was, yes, a measurement of some of the knowledge, but not an overall measurement. It wasn't a measurement of me as a social worker. It just said I didn't do well, and I didn't study well, or and I didn't perform well, especially in the test, because freezing up is a symptom of that. It's a symptom of, having the stakes of the test. Like my realization that this is an important test, I chose to make that an intimidating factor for me instead of a motivator. Like I can handle it, even if I don't pass it, or yes, it is important. It's in the way of my goals, but I didn't have to let that intimidate me as I did. So I think you have to wait a while before you take the test again. And I think it took me 3 months wait. But I went in, and I'm not perfect. So I still had moments where I messed up. But that is when I incorporated my coping statements. I said, that yes, this is important, but it doesn't define who I am. Yes, I'm uncomfortable, and yes, I truly desire to pass, but if I don't, I can handle it. I'll just have to take it again. Yes, it's a hassle if I have to take it again, but I'm willing to do that, to put myself in that discomfort, to get what I truly want in life, which was to be a licensed clinical social worker. Something else that is important to note that differentiate REBT from other modalities such as the cognitive behavioral therapeutic models is that we give the inferences. I had the inference that everyone's going to think that I'm a piss poor social worker. Well, my mentor said, well, let's assume in this moment that you told people you failed, and right off the bat, they tell you, wow, how could you do that? You kind of suck. I thought you were great, but no, you're terrible. Him even saying that to me, I felt emotions. And that is kind of the situation you want to be in, because it's better to explore what you're making yourself anxious about rather than to put a band-aid over it. It will be something to tell myself, oh no, my colleagues are so great, which they are. They're great in understanding. Hell, they're in the profession themselves. But if I were to just continue down that route and said that they will never think badly of me, I'm protecting myself from a potential outcome. And that's not as helpful as you think. Because what if I do have a colleague that right out the bat says, wow, I expected better. This is very disappointing, and I think that this makes you a bad social worker in my eyes. If I didn't explore that and prepare myself for that possibility and then convince myself or reinforce that I can bear even that harsh of a criticism, if I didn't do that, then I would be in complete shambles. So that's what REBT does. It gives you the inference. Let's just assume that they will think these things about you. But how will that still make me an incomplete or incompetent, inadequate social worker? Totally. How does their thinking so makes it my reality? And it's that choice that you have to make it your reality. And once I realized that I have more control over my emotions and behaviors than I thought, and my experiences too, I went to work not feeling miserable, not feeling like I should run and hide, but I went to work with the acceptance that I failed the test. I wish I didn't, but it doesn't define me as a person. And going to work didn't feel so miserable. I was able to face my colleagues. I was able to, continue studying without the pressure, and I did so much better. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel. I upload information and videos related to REBT, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. I also provide in every video a free resource that you can download and use, and hopefully that helps you even further. I hope to see you next time.